podcast. We're glad to have you back. Uh, in a minute, we're going to introduce Brett Swarts, but for now, I want you to please, if you could, subscribe to the podcast. That would be awesome. It's on any number of 30 some odd channels, Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, you name it. And while you're out there online, visit globalinvestoragent.com. This is where you'll find agents, real estate agents, who are not your typical agents. They are investor agents, and they're trained to work with you and I. We know who they are because we train them. So they know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate properties on and off market anywhere in the United States. They have access to every single property and every single owner with all kinds of information. So grab one of those. If you are an agent, by the way, click on the button there that says, learn more. This is on the website, globalinvestoragent.com. The way the market's turning, boy, I got to tell you guys, I've been in real estate for 36 years. This is not the time to panic. This is the time to prepare and get that part of your business built out, so you're going to be okay during this next couple of years here. So, in any case, without further ado, Brett, welcome aboard. I appreciate you taking your valuable time to share with us today.
Gary, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Excellent. Hey, if you could, I know we were chatting briefly. I've read your bio. Great, interesting subject, which is how to maximize your tax position favorably to yourself using any probably a number of strategies. I know 1031 exchange is one of them, but if you wouldn't mind, fill us a little bit. How did you get to where you are today to be able to discuss this type of subject, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, some really smart people. They say to get in the room with smarter people, Gary. And to
Mhm.
the extent that you can do that, you can start to level up and learn from those that are ahead of you in life. And I wasn't planning on being in tax or capital gains tax deferral, but the marketplace of 2008 showed a lot of things. Warren Buffett says you see who's been skinny dipping when the market goes out. And when the market went out, you saw those who had overpaid for 1031 exchanges, had too much debt, not enough liquidity. They lost half or everything. And I was in Sacramento, one of the biggest boom bust cities in Taxifornia. And we just saw a lot of friends, family, and clients get hammered. I met Marcus and Millichap helping people, sell and invest in multifamily properties, do 1031 exchanges. And we thought we were the Navy SEALs of investment real estate, but we quickly found out that sometimes these 1031s don't make any sense. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it might be good for the broker, but not good for the seller. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the seller wants some diversification, some liquidity, and the ability to time the market, and that's where I found out about the Deferred Sales Trust and had a chance to start to study underneath the creator of it, who is still the smartest person I've ever met. He's a genius. He's a
Mm-hmm.
CPA and a tax attorney, and we call him the Elon Musk of tax. And he created this 26 years ago, but most people
Mm-hmm.
just don't know about it, or if they've heard about it, they don't have people who know how to execute it. And so that began my study. I'd sit on phone calls for an hour at a time, webinars for an hour at a time, and just slowly, it's almost like maybe watching a surgeon put people back together. I had my
Mm-hmm.
ACL done on both my knees, played basketball in college. And I remember how smart these guys were. And I asked them how many surgeries they've done. They've done thousands of surgeries, right? So I'd asked the tax attorney, how many of these done? Thousands. And, they all worked. They've all worked. And
Mm-hmm.
never had a failed IRS audit, and never had something go wrong with it. And so, in the sense that it can actually be done, created this belief that we can change people's lives with their wealth, and in a big way. And being that we're in Taxifornia, one of the biggest tax states in the country,
Mm-hmm.
we had to figure out a better way. And so now, fast forward, I just train and coach my clients on how to do this for their portfolios, and I train and coach business professionals how to help their clients do this. And we're in a battle for the wealth of America, whether it's going to be in the hands of the people, Gary, or it's going to be in the hands of the government. And they've given us legal ways to do this. And by the way, it's really good for the government too. The
Mm-hmm.
government benefits because people sell and they can reinvest the funds into business purposes to create some more jobs. So it's actually a really good thing. One of the biggest
Yeah.
misconceptions is somehow the government doesn't benefit from tax deferral strategies, and that's what we do. We defer tax.
Mm-hmm.
We help people defer it and then invest it into other businesses, which creates more jobs. And so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's our passion. It's our love for what we do here. I live here in Northern California. My wife, 5 kids. I still help people buy and sell multifamily properties, but
Mm-hmm.
mainly I just help people to close on these deferred sales trusts across the countries, businesses, real estate, crypto, primary homes, and help them build
Mm-hmm.
a wealth plan that suits what they want to do.
Okay. Excellent. Well, you're in a uh, it's I know California is tough on people financially. It is a beautiful state, though. I've got family out there, all the way up in Redding, California, and all the way down to La Jolla near San Diego, and everywhere in between. And we tend to favor the countryside. We love the mountains, we love the beaches, and we're outdoorsy kind of people. But Sacramento is of course, the government seat of California, and so you probably get a lot more exposure there than most other parts of the state. And it is a lot of fun, though. But the area has always historically been great for investing, and some of the surrounding communities down in Tracy and Livermore and Pleasanton, places like that. I don't know what it's like today, but it was always good for flippers. Um, but let's go to the subject at hand. I know as an investor, we're always looking for ways to not just play offense and score points, but just as importantly, to play defense and keep some of what you have, keep the gains you have. And the trick is, how do you do that? Because, on the surface, it doesn't look like there's much to use, much to go by. And unfortunately, a lot of tax accountants are not really all that familiar with some of these more advanced strategies. They're not really complicated. It's in the code, that the IRS's code written for us to use. So let's touch on, you mentioned the trust. What is it and how is that different than like a traditional non-trust 1031 exchange? Are the two even related,
Yeah, great question. So a deferred sales trust, first of all, is not a 1031 exchange. It's
Mhm,
not a Delaware statutory trust. They often get confused because
mhm,
they're both a DST. A deferred sales trust is just an installment sale
mhm,
coupled with the trust that allows the seller to defer capital gains tax and live off of payments and slowly pay tax over time. So we would know it better as a seller carryback, like for a property. If Gary wants to sell a $10 million apartment complex
mhm,
and he owns it free and clear, and Joe down the street wants to buy it, well, Gary can be the bank for Joe. And in fact, he could actually finance him 100%. And to the extent that Gary hasn't received cash at closing, Gary's in a deferral state.
mhm,
Now, a 1031 exchange also works in a similar manner, and that Gary, instead of taking all of the cash at closing, can have a third party qualified intermediary receive the cash at closing, and that allows the deferral to
mhm,
continue because basically the tax law states that if you haven't received the capital constructively or actually, and you use IRC 453, which is the installment sale tax code versus IRC
mhm,
1031, which is also a deferral mechanism for investment real estate, you can defer the tax. And so the essence is an installment sale coupled with a trust. Now you work with a third party trustee, and this is where our firm comes in, our company comes in,
mhm,
and we serve as that third party trustee. And then we work with financial advisors. One of the unique parts about the deferred sales trust, they can invest in unlike kind properties. So you can
okay.
put it into stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Go ahead, Gary. You have a question there?
No, I'm just thinking I didn't realize that was a feature, because I know in 1031 exchange that has to be a like kind, but here, so you can sell a 20 unit building, but invest in a completely different type of a commodity. Wow. Okay.
Allows you to diversify, right? Our parents taught us to
Yeah.
sell high and buy low. They didn't
Mhm.
teach us to sell high and buy higher 180 days later, especially with interest rates that have maybe doubled in some places
Yeah.
and cap rates
Mhm.
that are still pretty low. And so we want to make sense of that. And you really want to define, what are you trying to accomplish, right? What is
Mhm.
your B? Your B is where you're going, your A is where you're at. And there's a lot of clients before they meet us, they're real estate rich and they're cash flow poor for a little bit, or
Mhm.
they're cryptocurrency or primary home rich or business rich, but they're time, energy, and diversification poor. And they're looking to downsize or looking to have more time and energy with family or to have location freedom. It's not just financial freedom anymore. A lot of our clients, they're all accredited investors and they're all millionaires. And so they've made
Mhm.
their wealth in the finances, but now they're looking for, you know, legacy play. They might have an
Mhm.
estate tax challenge. And so the way we look at this business is it's in a Rubik's Cube. If you're listening
Okay.
to this on the podcast, everyone shows up with a Rubik's Cube that has a little bit different colors and different areas. And our goal is just to try to solve the problems and to try to move the Rubik's Cube and try to line it up for what you're trying to accomplish, where the sides can be as congruent as possible, right? And with the deferred sales trust, with the flexibility and
Mhm.
what it can deliver for capital gains tax deferral and estate tax elimination, we found to be the Netflix version to the 1031 exchange. And I'll touch on that other part of your question. You said, well, how's it different from the 1031 exchange? Well, number
Okay.
one, It doesn't require like-kind requirement. We talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
It can go into it can go into cryptocurrency, it can go to business ventures. It can also go back into investment real estate. It can go to
Mm-hmm.
stocks, bonds, mutual funds, insurance. Number two, it requires no timing restriction, which is probably the most important thing about this. In other
Yeah.
words, you can dollar cost average. The money can sit at the bank area and you can wait. You can put it back into the stock market when it makes sense for you. If you want to put it into the stock market, you can also buy real estate when it makes sense. In fact, one of the best deal stories, Gary, for this, and I call this the Monday morning deal story, Monday morning quarterback deal story, where a client who used the Deferred Sales Trust, he in 2006 sold at the peak. Okay. And
Okay.
he's looking around for his 1031 goggles and he's going, this makes 0 sense. This gentleman's in Minnesota. He owns a
Mm-hmm.
property up near the Minnesota Vikings Stadium. He sells it for about 20 million. This guy hates the stock market, loves commercial real estate, but for the first time ever, he's saying, I'm not going to 1031 because I think something's going to happen. And these deals don't make any sense. So I'm going to put it into this Deferred Sales Trust and I'm just going to wait. I'm going to put it into conservative stocks, bonds, mutual funds, things that aren't subject to huge shifts in the marketplace, hedged
Mm-hmm.
and protected, very conservative, just kind of wanted to break even for a while. And guess what happened? In 08, the market tanks, right? And
Mm-hmm.
guess what happened then? In a couple of years, the person who had bought his property got foreclosed on. And so in 2011, 5 years after he sold the property, the bank calls him and says, hey, we just foreclosed on that property. Oh yeah, from that, that wild 1031 buyer who overpaid for it. Yeah. Well, we're just curious, do you want to buy it back from us, the bank? And he goes, well, maybe. What's the price? And they said 60 cents on the dollar.
Whoa.
He says, sure,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like a pretty good deal. Give me a couple days. He was able to take the funds and adjust the funds and the investments into a brand new LLC and buy back that property at 60 cents on the dollar with the Deferred Sales Trust, still not paying a single dollar in tax. He hasn't received constructive receipt. He's deferred that capital gains tax and he sold high and he bought low. So when I heard this story, Gary, I said, that makes sense. That's lining up what we've all been taught to do. We've been
Mm-hmm.
taught to try to make it congruent with our needs and our wants and what we know
Mm-hmm.
our investment strategies are. We just need that vehicle to do that, and the Deferred Sales Trust gives you that ability to do that.
Okay. So the trust itself, um, the trust document, it's like and I have a trust myself, but it's an asset protection trust. Just it's an old school traditional, one of the original types of trust, I guess. Was this a sort of like a holding tank? In other words, he said it was 5 years later, and he put his gains from this original sale in this trust to defer them, so that deferment doesn't have any real time limit. It's like a true like a family trust. As long as you don't personally touch that money and it doesn't come into your pocket, it sits in there. You can invest it later on, and I guess maybe perpetually even defer that tax until you. So well, actually, let's talk about that now. So let's say he buys it back, then he sells it again. If he sells it outside the trust, is it this like any trust? When you pull the money out, you do have to pay taxes on that, and as long as it stays in a trust, it's okay. I'm probably getting the body of law I shouldn't be talking about here, but I'm just trying to think of my own knowledge of these trusts. Is that sort of what happens?
So
Like you
how does
can
this
keep,
work is what you're asking. How does the
yeah,
trust,
the
how
mechanics
does
of it, yeah.
how's the mechanics work without incurring the tax? And so to the
Hmm.
extent that the client receives payment back from the trust personally, that's where taxes do. Understand that he's become a lender. So what
Hmm.
he first did is he sold the property and he exchanged it for a promissory note. So he became a lender. Okay. And he gave
Hmm.
up ownership of the trust. He doesn't own the trust. The trust owes him back the money. So that's the first concept. Number two, the trust can invest in a number of things, including joint venture partnerships with you as the note holder or the creditor. And so we do that by setting up an LLC where the LLC has multiple owners, the note holder and the trust. So the trust
Hmm.
is still invested into an LLC, but we give typically you the majority of the ownership because you're doing the sweat equity. You're finding the deal, you're structuring the deal, you're running the deal. And in that scenario, should the deal sell for a gain, you personally can take that gain, or the trust can purchase your position in exchange for a promissory note while rolling back whatever its investment was still inside of that deal. So now you have two
Okay.
promissory notes, one trust, two promissory notes. We just did this for another client. They sold
Hmm.
cryptocurrency for $5 million. It's actually Bitcoin. They bought it for
Hmm.
50,000, went to 50 million. And at 54,000 a coin, they exited 5 million into the trust. 4 of that 5 million was used to start a brand new tech startup company. That was
Hmm.
part of her dream to get away from the big tech company and do her own thing. And so instead of having to pay about 1.585 million in tax, right? She lives in Taxifornia. She's able to defer that tax and put the majority into a startup company, all tax deferred. Now that startup company may go to $50 million in 10 years. What's going to happen? Well, that original 4 million that went into the startup company rolls back into the trust, which still owes her the money. And that
Mm-hmm.
additional gain can be used for another promissory note. Let's call that $46 million promissory note.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of this deferred sales trust. It's the execution and the team to help you go through that. That's the biggest thing. But it's, that's why you hire 1031 qualified intermediaries. That's why you hire capital gains tax solutions, us, why you hire a financial advisor and CPAs. We map it all out. We
Mm-hmm.
execute the business plan, and then you get the chance to grow your wealth.
Wow. Okay. All right. Now, earlier on, we mentioned that we could sell the piece of property and later on invest in some other non, like you said, Bitcoin, for example, or any cryptocurrency. Um, is the same thing true reverse? Can we sell? I'm guessing it is. So in the trust, if you sold, so let's say you bought crypto at, when it was $20, now it's $20,000, for example. Um, would you sell the crypto into the trust for that promissory note? And then could you take that inside the trust and then buy real estate? In other words, it's the same, it goes
Yes.
both directions. Oh, that's
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
you can go in and out of different asset types and in and out of
Mhm.
different asset types on the investment side of things. And so you're not, it's agnostic when it comes to investments,
Okay.
businesses, investment real estate, ground up development deals. We have a client who just sold a $2.6 million business in Alabama, and they're building a 72 multifamily property in Tennessee with part of
Hmm.
the funds. We have other clients that sold high end primary homes in Palo Alto and put
Hmm.
it all into the stock market to defer his tax and to grow his wealth. And so it's definitely flexible, and it's based upon your risk tolerance, Gary, and really kind of what you like to invest in. We're going
Okay.
to work with the financial advisor to formulate a plan and then execute on that investment plan.
Yeah. Well, I hope a lot of my clients and colleagues are listening because this is exactly the kind of thing that they're doing. I'm personally in real estate and also in crypto to a degree, not like some of these other guys, but they're also using gains on the gains that they're getting to buy IULs, index universal life, where they get a cash value for the death benefit. And also there's another component. It's like a conduit account where it's like ends up being sort of an annuity later on in life. They're using it to pay all their bills. I don't know anything about it beyond that, but this is right up their alley. So they're using this type of strategy, and I think they'd be extremely interested to learn about this trust. We've learned about other kinds of trusts where you can own businesses and things like that, but this sounds like it's a specific use, and it's exactly what we need because I don't need uh, a giant trust that's I'm not a Kennedy, I'm a Wilson, so we're doing okay, but we're not doing as well as the Kennedys. So I don't think I need a $60,000 trust, but something like this, specific uses to help us deal with our investments and play defense and keep, uh, only pay what we're required to pay, following all the rules, all the laws, all the, everything according to the IRS code, for example. And of course, this sounds perfect. So the trust itself, is it, is it like a long-standing trust, something that's been around for years, or is this um, something that came out in the last few years based on more new or recent IRS code, or how did this whole thing come about? I guess
Yeah, let's talk about the history here in 1 second, but
Mhm.
also I just want to clarify who this is for. So this
Okay,
is anyone who's selling a highly appreciated asset worth at least $1 million,
okay,
right? Net proceeds, and also it has at least a $1 million gain.
hmm
That's got to be a big enough pain. Why? Because there's 25 to 50% of that gain is going to be hit with capital gains tax and depreciation recapture, depending on the asset and depending
hmm
where you live and what state you're in. Okay, so $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, but it
hmm
literally can be anything. It can be LLC, S Corp, C Corp, carried interest, captive insurance. It could be a primary home. It could be a business. It could be cryptocurrency. It could be commercial real estate. It can actually save a failing 1031 exchange. Make sure you get with us to learn about how to make sure you set that up properly.
hmm
Okay, so that's who it's for. It's got to be big enough. Number
okay,
two, what's the history, right? If anyone approaches you with any kind of tax strategy, you got to ask some simple questions. And here are a few. Number one, how long has it been going on for? Like, how long has
Mhm.
this been happening? Is this something that's brand new, a couple
Mhm.
years, a decade? Well, this has gone over 26 years. Okay. And the next question you should ask, well, how many of these have actually closed? And the answer is thousands. The
Mhm.
next question you should ask, okay, well, out of those, how many have been audited? And the answer is over about 20. Okay, about
Mhm.
20. Now the question becomes now, who audited it? Well, the tax attorney, who's my business partner, who created this, and what would the outcome of those audits? They're all perfect, no change, no finding audits.
Mhm.
Okay, what happens if I get audited? Well, there's a lifetime audit defense that's built in. So
Mhm.
batting 1,000, thousands of closes, over 26-year track record. One of the biggest audits was in California for $100+ million property
Mhm.
sale in Southern California. Over and over and over again, it's worked perfectly, right?
Mhm.
If you're doing it and you're following the formalities and you're working with the team that are going to do it the way it should be done.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are some copycats that have come in the past so many years, and a lot of those have already got blown up on the IRS with the IRS, and they're on the dirty dozen or the watch list. And
Mhm.
so we've never been on a dirty dozen or a watch list, and yeah, tens of thousands of tax returns done, and we work
Mhm.
on a conditional basis. This is also another thing too. We'll go through your transaction and your opportunity, and we'll look at it, and we'll maybe do a 1031, maybe an opportunity zone, maybe a CRT,
Mhm.
maybe a Delaware statutory trust, maybe you're a mixture of a couple of those. But we'll map it out, and way we get paid is if you close on the deferred sales trust, we get paid.
Mhm.
But the key is timing. We got to make sure you set it up and get it all ready to go, just in case you want to use it.
Okay, cool. All right. So that satisfies the who and the when. Once you have a gain that's $1 million or more, that makes sense. Um, but as far as the like where this works, obviously it sounds it's a U.S. Trust, but can foreigners get this trust? I used to live in Canada, and I've got colleagues and clients in Canada, people from all over India, Israel, like 13 different countries we deal with. So are they eligible for this too? How does
Absolutely. Let me also
okay?
clarify that it is US based tax code, which means if
Mhm.
anybody is subject to US based capital gains tax or estate tax,
Okay.
then this is an absolute home run, especially if you're a foreigner who
Mhm.
is subject to the estate tax challenges of anything above really $68,000. If you're a foreigner, by the way, is subject to a
Okay.
40% death tax. And so that has nothing to do with capital gains tax or the stepped up basis. We've been taught, and or maybe just not taught all the way, that a 1031 exchange, you can swap until you drop, and then when you drop, you get a stepped up basis,
Mhm.
and that's great for capital gains tax, but it has nothing to do with
Mhm.
estate tax. And so
Yeah.
for a U.S. citizen, 24 million married, 12 million single, the estate tax challenge is a real one because it's 40% debt tax on anything
Mm.
above those amounts. Unless you use a deferred sales trust, it's called a 2.0 or a plus.
Mhm.
Before you pass, we can sell the assets, move it outside the taxable estate without any life insurance, without giving anything away to charity, and without
Mhm.
having to have 50 kids try to gift it all away.
Yeah.
In one transaction in one day, you got to sell it for fair market value. We can
Mhm.
move it outside the taxable state. We just did a deal for a client out of California. They sold an asset in Colorado for 5 million. There were 25 million. All
Mhm.
25 million is inside the taxable estate, and they're around 60. They're still young, and they're
Mhm.
looking at this 25 million growing. And one of the main reasons they use the deferred sales trust is because we got the $5 million asset sale outside of their taxable estate, which they are really excited about because that eliminated 40% of that 5 million, which is about $2 million.
Okay.
Now, if they were, imagine this, if they were in, Canada, or they were
Mhm.
non-US citizens, their exemption is not even 24 million. Their exemption is not even 12 million. Their exemption is about, I think it's like 65 or $68,000, which means if they were
Mm.
worth $100 million, essentially, Gary, and
Yeah.
it's subject to U.S. capital gains tax and estate tax, they're going to be hit with a 40% death tax upon when they die.
Mm.
Whereas with the deferred sales trust, we could sell all $100 million worth of assets before they die, and we eliminate that 40% death tax. It's a very, very powerful strategy there.
Yeah. That sounds like it. What's amazing too is I mentioned 1031 exchange in the beginning is like a comparison. In reality, is that in and of itself, it's very strict. I mean, if you're just selling a piece of real estate in an exchange, you got 45 days to identify what you're going to buy next. And there's some more details here, and essentially 180 days to close. And here, it sounds like we don't have those restrictions at all. There's no 45-day identification window. There's no 180-day closing period. You basically put it in this trust vehicle, allows you to defer your next move, your next investment decision, and give
Yeah.
yourself time.
We call that the shotgun wedding, right? We all have friends who got married early or too quick, right? They got engaged in 45 days, getting married in 180, and you're like, whoa, you're moving fast. Well, that's what the 1031 often challenges us with, right? We got to get married quickly. Whereas the deferred sales trust, you don't. In fact, I had clients to sit in the bank. We sat in the bank when COVID-19 hit, when there was uncertainty, even right now. We're just waiting and seeing, the money's sitting there. Inflation is kind of getting at it. So we got to find ways to, go into, we do lending, where we go with lending groups that are doing like hard money lending and getting some good cash flow. It's not subject usually necessarily to real estate, not really subject to the stock market. It's kind of somewhere in between. So there's creative ways to do that. But the key is, when does it make sense for you? Right. And if it takes some time for the market to shake out and you to be able to buy low, that is optimal timing. That's a way to transform the way you build wealth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all, to me, it's, today, $1 million, how do I want to say this? $1 million today is not anything close to what it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, that was the thing. Everybody wants to be a millionaire. But now I'm thinking, if your goal is to be a millionaire, you're going to be in trouble. You can't, it's not enough to keep up with the cost
The
of
10
living.
millionaire is the new millionaire, right? It's
That's
basically
it.
10x
Gotta
again.
be. I agree. 10. So how now, in order for someone to participate in this, what are the steps? Like, I guess they reach out to you. Is there a website, um, uh, a article, free consultation, that you can share? Well, there we go.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, and you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. In fact, we have content released every single day, and we have an entire deferred sales trust intro series on there. The 1031 exchange versus the deferred sales trust, the deferred sales trust versus the Delaware statutory trust, client testimonials, basically overcoming false beliefs that it's too good to be true, all of the things there. We also have a new book coming out called Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy. And it's really my story about how I came to understand this and execute this for clients. And it's not just me. We have really smart people in the book, like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, and other financial advisors and commercial real estate experts and multifamily syndicators and such. So check out the book, Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy, coming to Amazon here real shortly.
Okay. Well, Kevin's in there. I'm all in. I used to be in a mastermind group that he was involved in years ago. And we ran into each other back in June, and I'm thinking, well, he's probably not going to remember me. And he actually remembered me. Pretty neat guy. Down to earth.
Guy. Love Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm not saying he's endorsed it all the way. In fact, we're still wooing him and his team. The good news, he's been on my podcast a couple of times. He's agreed to be a part of the book. His chapter is his story about how he made mentors to millions. But we're hoping, he says, Brett, if this is true, he'll become a part of my dream team. So we'll see. He's taking his time on that, and we know it's true, and it's just a matter of time, hopefully, that Kevin is all in with us.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I teach a class every Monday night called Monday Night Live. Now it's 7 p.m. Eastern, which is 4 p.m. Pacific time. But I'd love to have you teach that class too, because we have people coming in, usually 300 to 400 registrants every week. They don't all show up, of course, but people from all over the country. So it's be a great reach. And more importantly, the agents who are on, the real estate agents, work with the investors. So if the agents see this, like, holy smokes, this is what my client needs. We've got 3,000 investors across the country, looking for stuff like this,
We're on a mission to train 10,000 of the best
Cool.
business professionals across the country in the next 10 years with the deferred sales trust strategy. We believe it is the cornerstone for the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet, which is $32 trillion from all of the baby boomers to the millennials. And those are tied to high-end primary homes, businesses, and private equity. In commercial real estate. And that represents 50% of the total net worth of America. And so if you don't have this strategy, it's like not having a 1031. It's like not knowing about an IRA. It's like your hands are tied behind your back, or a 401k. Like, it's that pivotal to the future of your business to help people. And so I would love to come on, Gary, and equip agents and financial advisors, CPAs, business professionals with the strategy.
Okay. Well, what we'll do for all the listeners, I know this is a lot to take in. The information is going to be on the show notes our podcast page. You'll see the show notes, where you go, what you visit. But what was again, you got the podcast, you got the website.
Just
Let me
Capital
write this
Gains
down.
Tax Solutions right here. Capital Gains Tax Solutions. You can search
Yep.
that on iTunes, on YouTube, and then capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Those are the main spaces. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Brett Swarts. You can search that, and happy to connect. And we have our free mastermind too, by the way, every Friday at 10 a.m. PST,
Okay.
1 p.m. Eastern. Everyone's invited. Where we break down the deal close story of the week. We're answering frequently asked questions. We're helping people overcome false beliefs of what the Deferred Sales Trust is. You can bring everything to the table there. It's every Friday, 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. Well, here's a $64,000 question. I know you might not be able to answer me, but I'm sure, particularly dentists. Dentists are great business owners. They're smart. They're trained well. The Dental Association does a great job of equipping them. They're all probably asking right now, Gary, ask them how much this costs. I know it's probably different for everybody, but is there a range of cost for the
Our
trust?
fees are set. I'll give you the fees right now. And we just actually
Okay.
helped dentists out in New Jersey, and he exited about a $2 million exit, and we helped him defer about $600,000 of tax. And he goes, Brett, I've worked
Nice.
for 30 years. This is my retirement. This is my future. Like, this is amazing that you can do this. So, So the fees are really simple. So let's just keep it like a $1 million deal. Let's say they sold a commercial property for $1 million. 15,000 is the one-time fee to the tax attorney. So 1.5% on the first million. If it were a $2 million deal, it'd be 1.25 on anything above that. So let's say it was 2 million, be 15,000 on the first million, 12,750 on the second million. Okay. Now the recurring fees, that's the thing we have to make sense of. That's why we want to have a $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. That's for me, the trustee and the financial advisor. It's about 1.5% to 2% on a recurring basis. So let's just say, but that's on the net proceeds though. So let's say you sold a business for 5 million, but you net at 3 after debt payoff and closing costs. On that 3 million, be about 1.5% to 2% on a recurring basis for as long as the trust is in place. There's like a tax return for the trust that it files. But our ultimate goal is typically to return about 8%, depending on your risk tolerance. It could be a little bit lower, net of those recurring fees. So net of that 1.5 to 2. So we want to try to earn about 9.5 to 10 over any 10-year period of time. And then every 10 years you can renew for 10. So let's say it's $1 million that was in the trust. We want to try to net you about 80,000 per million on average per year, net of those recurring fees. Every 10 years you can renew for 10 years. You can pass it to your kids inside of your living trust, and they can step into your shoes. Or we can use the DST 2.0 where your kids are the beneficiaries and it passes outside the taxable estate. So that's the simple answer, Gary, with the fees.
Well, that sounds good to me. I mean, I know I've met folks around the country who are in the unit trust business. Not many of them. It's hard because a lot of attorneys and accountants are really not familiar with these strategies. They're more in the old school traditional world for the average person. But the way the world's going, everybody needs to be above average, and I think this is an extremely valuable strategy. My gosh, you look at the benefit, the cost benefit analysis. It's a no brainer. So, in any case, I really appreciate you doing this. And for everybody listening, please leave a good review because we covered a lot in a short period of time today. And I think Brett deserves a good review. And plus, it's the currency of podcasts. It's what makes podcasts go around. We put time and energy into it. It's a public service. We enjoy it, and you get to for a push of a button get it for free. So if you could pay us back with a review, we all really appreciate that. And while you're out there, go ahead and visit, just Google Capital Gains Tax Solutions and you'll come up with Brett's site. And remember the mastermind too, that's invaluable, right? Jump in on that group because masterminds are inherent in my success over all the years. The biggest gains I've ever made in my businesses were because I surrounded myself with the right people, and masterminds are the way to do that. So in any case, have at it, guys. Remember to go to globalinvestoragent.com. Okay, if you are a real estate agent, right now is the time for you to be taking this stuff seriously. I'm telling you, my nature is not to be an agent. My nature is an investor. I'm just telling you because I've trained thousands of you over the years. This is the time to prepare. Do not wait. Click on the learn more button and be part of this. Be part of this community here. So go ahead and do that. And you can join us on Monday Night Live every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're glad to see you there. And we'll see you next week on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Okay, let's see here. All right, looks like they both recorded, so that's good. And that was a good one. I knew it was a lot to cover in a short period of time, but what I'll do is we generally have 3 to 4 months of inventory, but I'm going to tell Beverly this needs to be pushed up because it's getting to that time of year. People are starting to think, my gosh, I've got to prepare, and what can I do to minimize my tax burden. And one thing I forgot to mention in here is a lot of people get confused. They think they need to set up the trust and then go get the assets. The reality is it's not really critically necessary until you have those big gains, and then you just exactly. So you can do the investing now. Learn as much as you can learn, and when the time is right, take advantage of the strategy. So I'm probably going to be there in the wintertime. I got involved in crypto, and it's done way better than the real estate. Real estate's got me where I am, but the crypto is much faster, and so I know at some point I'm going to want to move that around and take advantage of other investments, and this is the way to do it. And I don't have to worry about
you
all
nailed
the
it, Gary. Like if you get that concept right there, that
Yep.
I call my client at 68,000 a coin, and,
Yep.
and after she sold it 54,000 a coin, and I said, hey, this might, I think I called her at 65 or 66. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, you've already exited 5 of your 50 million. Now your 45 million now is up to 70 million. I said, why don't we exit more? Because this thing could shift. And this is the other big concept. And she's like, well, I'm just getting to know you guys, and I'm like, okay, no problem, no pressure. And then sure enough, obviously Bitcoin drops to 15,000 a coin. But the concept is she could have sold, Monday morning quarterback, but this is actually what's possible. Exited all 70 million at 68,000 a coin. Literally waited in the bank for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, all tax deferred, set up an LLC, and bought back into Bitcoin at 15,000 a coin.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we can't put all of it all into crypto. We got to stay diversified, and she wasn't going to do that anyway. She's going to diversify, but that's the point, right? You can put small pieces into different Bitcoin, Ethereum, stock market, real estate, diversify, and then you can build that back up, and then you can sell it and do it all over, rinse, wash, repeat. So it's so powerful if you just get the concept.
Yeah.
And you're right. Get with this early so that you don't have to be guessing. You already have the exit plan, right? Plan the exit plan, then go plan your exit. You only pay us at closing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy you on an email with Beverly's my implementer, call her right hand person. She's an implementer, and have her set you up for, if you don't mind teaching. It'll be 4:00 Pacific time. It'd be a great audience for you. So while this is more, out there on the airwaves, this class will have actual live people you can connect with. That would be great. And then we'll get that going. I'm trying to think. And so your podcast, I'll check it out. I don't know if I would be a good guest on yours or not. We generally try to exchange. Hey, you put me on mine, I'll put you on yours.
Great guest, Gary.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we've got the agents all over. That's the thing. It's not anything I'm selling. It's just something I did because I did it for myself, and I realized everybody needs this. But they can definitely find themselves some highly trained individuals that are most agents just aren't like this. The reason I did it is because I was frustrated with the agents. That's why I did it.
Yeah, I want to learn more of your story and everything that you're doing. This should be great. So good to have you on the podcast. So shoot me an email, and I'll have my team book you on there, and then just give me some dates that you're thinking on the Monday, and then we'll just get it booked in here. I'll be traveling the next couple of weeks with the family. So, but after that, I'm pretty open.
It'll probably be December. I know she's got the classes all the subject scheduled all the way through November, but
December sounds good. December sounds better, actually. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well,
thank you, Gary.
Brett, pleasure to meet you, man. I look forward to seeing you in Florida. I'll be in Florida in 2 weeks, and I'll be there for 2 weeks, and then maybe we can catch up. I'm Sarasota area,
Okay, excellent. Yeah, you're next to Kevin. Yeah. So I'm in the St. John's, Rivertown, St. Augustine area. So
I know it. I taught there before, so I know exactly where it is.
Perfect. I'll talk to you soon, Gary. Good to meet you.
You too, Brett.